Thank you very much. And I feel me at home here because of the kindness of Roger and his hospitality, and of the experience I could make with this morning with the graduated students and with the professional people of in the section of television. And just now, I must say, I'm very under the impression of these young men here. And this is a real wonderful example for you and for me, to be so clear what we are doing, that you are never misunderstandable. What he does so perfectly. I saw it the first time. I'm very, very impressed. So this is a professional job, what he is doing now, dealing. And we should do and understand our profession just in this manner. This is a professional behavior, full of seriosity, full of sensibility, and full of professional knowledge of the science. So many science. I'm surprised that it's possible for so young person to give all the science so clear, and I regard it, the fingers. How many possibilities has our hand, has our fingers? This is fantastic. I found it once in the theater, and by a great German actor. It was Harald Kreuzberg. And I admire the fingers, and he has now the same talent, the same flexibility, and the same clarity moving and the fingers. My compliment for him. So now I start and tell I have now troubles with me because of I am still under the impression of what he is doing. And I try to be as clear as he is clear. As you already know, I am born in Switzerland. And what I want to show first, this slide, and this means it's not so important where we are standing now, but it's more important the direction in your life, what you are thinking you should go. And I think now of a sentence by Goethe. Goethe said, the German genius writer, said 150 years ago about, it's not important what you could learn in the schools. More important is what you are doing with yourself, out of your personality, with your possibilities yourself. And as the ingenious scientist Fritz Zwicky wrote in a book with the title, Everybody is Ingenious, is a Genius. He said everybody has the possibility, if he can find the way to himself to be ingenious, to be the first time and the realization of one possibilities of milliards of human beings. I mean, everybody of you are the first time existing, and you will never be repeated by a double. And this is your chance. It was my chance. What you are seeing, what I am presenting, it was only my possibilities, not more. And you have the same chance to be yourself and use and accept your chance to come back to yourself. So what you can learn in the schools is more or less are stones for a ground who makes clear the problems waiting for you, the problems in your future profession. And so each stone should only be a stone to build up a solid ground. And the solid ground means it's a solid ground if it's a ground of intelligence, of clarity, of transparency, of knowledge of rules. If you are a graphic designer, rules needs. I want to say it's when the rules in typography are to know what a good typography is. In graphic design, what a good composition is. In photography, what a good photography is and what a bad photography can be. So, coming back and going away from this slides to the next one. Do you probably know where Switzerland is? I was born in Switzerland. Switzerland is, as I make a joke, is the center of the world. But of course, Rochester can say the same. You are here in the center of your world, and this is right. And if you don't know, you see now Europe, and Switzerland is just here. And this is a small country north of the mountains, south of Germany. Here is Germany, here is France, here is Austria, also with plenty of mountains, and here is Italy. This is Italy. Yeah, something has Yugoslavia here, common with Italy. The Greek, in the early, before 1,000 years, were here in Italy and some places here too. So I was not quite wrong. But anyway, I made in my life so many errors. I will repeat the errors this evening too, and please correct me by laughing. When you think it was an error, present or shows me by laughing, please. Now, here is France, here is Spain, here is Sweden, here is Norway, here is Denmark, and the United Kingdom with Ireland. And here is your great anti-brave Russia. So I was born here in Switzerland. And Switzerland, this is now the map of Switzerland. Here is the lake of Zurich. Here is Zurich. And I was born here in an old, 1,000 years old city. The city belongs at that time before 1,000 years to Austria. And now I moved then with 16 years to Zurich. Made here 2 years, was apprentice for 2 years. When I visited the School for Applied Art for 1 year and stayed till today in Zurich. This means 12 years ago we moved to a suburb, to a small village of 2,000 people, 6 or 8 kilometers distance from Zurich to Unterengstringen. You see here is the region of the mountains. Switzerland has only a very small part of a plain landscape. The most part of Switzerland are hills or are covered by mountains. And the white mountains here means they have a whole year ice and snow. Now, Zurich and Switzerland, you see 2 slides of our wonderful mountains. This is Shizuko Yoshikawa, my wife, and she wanted to be photographed here to demonstrate that she is a climber, stone climber, but this is not true. Yes. But we were here together on the top with the railway. And this is Zurich, the small city of about 450,000 inhabitants in the evening. This is an old church, 1,000 years old, with a little bit younger. This is probably 400, 300 years old. And this is the river who divides our city in two parts. Here the hill here is a small hill. Here were 1,000 and 1,200 years ago were Roman here. They built here as a castle, just here, and only because here the bridge was the only connection between the south and the north part of this part of Europe. And so they fixed and made and wanted to control this bridge. You see, this is a part of Zurich, and this is the university. This is the high school for architecture and technique. And the most houses in Zurich are small, as you see, 3, 4, 5 floors. It's very easy to live there because it's more or less not so hectic as New York is. It's a quiet city. You can, I think, you can overthink your professional problems here in a quietness. Now, Corbusier built at the end of his life, or he made the plan for this house. This house should serve as a living house and as an exhibition hall. It was a young Swiss girl. She was not young. She was about 35 years old when she was fascinated by the work by Corbusier, visited him in Paris and asked him to make the plans for a house, and she will pay for. And she paid for, against the interest of the city, but the city were allowed and permitted to use the ground. It's a city ground. And she built up this building, this only existing building in Zurich by Corbusier. And still today there are symposiums and exhibitions about the work by Corbusier. This is our house in the village close to Zurich, in the style more or less by Mies van der Rohe. When I planned to build a house, I looked for the address by Mies van der Rohe, but he just died at that time. So with his idea, I asked a colleague, and we built together this house. I started more or less because of my poor education. I started as illustrator. And I show the illustration because of one point of view. After some years, I was well known as an illustrator. And I could live with the illustration because of the illustration. But now is the important point. I was always self-critical enough to mistrust the success I got with the illustration. I compared what I did as an illustrator always with a drawing by Matisse, by Picasso, by Leger and other masters. And then I thought it's not enough, because an illustration here, something is always weak, because it's not an ingenious illustration. It's an illustration who can every people can do it with more or less diligence and energy, and it doesn't need much talent. But anyway, I thought I want to work further with works in which every detail is controlled and is so that no detail in the work is unnecessary for the whole expression. This was when an early poster for a Beethoven concert, and I made it on the basis of a construction. I worked then day and night time and did hundred samples of construction, and looked which construction I could find to transmit an element of music, like rhythmic, like dynamic, like movement, like transparency, like elegance, like poetry. And for this poster, you can see the contraction drawing in the exhibition. The center of this drawing is here, and from this center I find the lines for all directions. And the thickness of this line is the half of this one. This is the half of this one. This is the half of this one, and this the half of this, and this the half of this here. So everything is here more or less intellectual, constructive done. Yeah, you see here now the contraction. You see the typography here was aligned with a vertical line of this here, and this is the end of the columns on the left side with the title Beethoven. And I made a series of other posters like this, and if you have once the chance to design a series of posters, this is one a problem to find out a solution for each poster who is more or less analog with other poster. I mean, if you see one poster, you can remember the other poster. They have the similar typography, the same sizes of a character of typography of the letters, and the same strong will of a construction. This is another one done on the basis of a very complicated composition. It has the diagonal form was chosen because it's the longest line in the poster. The vertical line distance is not so long as the diagonal. And the diagonal also, it gives you the impression of dynamic. It's the longest direction in the poster and expresses a dynamic, because a vertical line is an expression of a static status, of a static attitude. And the angled line is an expression of a falling line or of a movement. And so I tried to express one's movement, on the other side a concrete constructive contraction, and Stravinsky, like Alban Berg, like Fortner, they tried to work to create their compositions on the basis of a very clear thinking, very clear and intellectual composition. This is another. I did two posters with the same forms, but and same typography, but different colors. The construction was different again. It should express the will to live with the heaviness of the earth, to go up and to go to a certain situation who expresses lightness and elegance and poetry too. This was a poster of a series of 3 equal posters. The basic was with construction, the typography here, the fields of the typography, and the three posters has the same square as the basic and the same division of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fields, but the division of the fields were now different. You see it's different from this one. And here you see I use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times the red, and when the blue, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 times the blue, and the black 6 times 2. It has a certain intellectual reason and in the composition. And the third was heavier with other colors. And this is quite, and this was a problem for, and my interest too, to change always the entrance in the problems of musical compositions, to find out another transmission of musical themes, of musical as of an interpretation of music. And to change always the composition was not so easy, because if you have once, if you found once a good composition, you think you have to repeat this kind of composition at new, and to change it makes always you fall back to the beginning, and you have the same trouble at new to find out a new composition, a reasonable composition. You see here, for instance, the width here is the double of this width, and this is the double of this width, and this the double of this, and this has the double dimension of width here. And the height is always the same. This height is the same as this height, and this. And I brought in the movement by the different position of these geometric elements. This was then the same second music and the same composition in blue. And another, to let this composition shows you the green, blue and green forms hanging between lines, independent hanging, and in a unsure situation could this green form seems to go up, this seems to fall down, but the white form here hold up this blue form. This seems to be fall out because it passes already the lines here, and the tendency is to fall, but the white space here and high it the whole. So it's a balance between falling and up rising. And this interaction was interesting for me. And the typography was aligned with the forms here. And this was aligned with the end of the blue. This was aligned with the green. So this was aligned with the black lines here. So each element was a part of the whole composition. And to find out such a solution is not so easy. You have to study and to repeat and to criticize what you did. Here I cut a metal form. I cut out these forms here. And you see here 4 color lines. In each line are 5 colors: the blue, the red, the green, the blue. This was a dark. It was or violet or gray and yellow. You see that each color is to find in each line, vertical line, but in another dimension. The shortest is here, the second short is here, the third short is here, then the longer is here, and the longest is here. Like the red, you can find 5 times the red color. The shortest is here, the second short is here, the longest then here, and the second longest is here, and the longest is here. It's and you can find it repeated with a blue color and with a gray color here. So it's a certain consequence in the construction. Nothing is unclearly done. You can say, I mislike it, but it was exactly precisely done. The typography was aligned with this, and the title here with this form here. And this part was the half of the height here. This is another expression of a musical tendance or energy. And I go now through the next one a little bit faster. Vertical, horizontal typography, the same with the middle axe here. And it gives a certain movement in the typography. Here you find the typography on the left and right side of a middle color form. You have here a green and red, and at the border of a poster you find the blue and yellow. The mixture of blue and yellow gives you this green here. This is the red. You can find it here again. The yellow and the blue, and if you mix them, you get the green. So it has a certain logic. And here 3 solutions with typographic elements. It was a series of 4 posters and 4 concerts, Musica Viva concert with modern music. Here I tried to express the colorful sound of the music by using different colors for the typography. The same, I brought in a rhythmic in a horizontal rhythmic with asymmetric acts of the typographic elements, and I used also different colors. The Musica Viva here used as in big letters with a diagonal setted typography of information about the program. The horizontal rhythmic gave me the impression of a complicated rhythm of a musical composition. And another sample, another possibility to express rhythm and a certain poetry in music, and a certain lightness and a certain elegance was it. And a play with 2 words, musica and viva, using the E 2 times, and to align the typography with the letters above, and the whole was then here in a square, and this part was a certain part of the whole height. So it was very strong organized. And this was a sample an unknown person sent me from Spain. It was a plagiat of this here. And a graphic designer in Spain was impressed probably from these posters and made this copy. And I show it only because it's an expression that some person was impressed by this poster, couldn't find a better solution, and used it and made it a little bit less organized. So now the following, I go quickly further. What I want to express is not more than I tried to find out a clear constructive composition by the medium of typography, photography, or drawing. I show this because I post and the posters before they were printed in the streets on a distance, and want to find out if the poster is still recognizable from a certain distance. Here from 20 meters, when here from about 50 meters. And when it was clear design, enough clear design, I let print it. With another poster at the beginning of the 50th, the photography in the posters were forgotten, and I introduced the photography in the posters at New in Switzerland. And this was when I made a series of posters. Weniger Lärm means less noise. It expresses the unsatisfying situation in our time, but we meet at every place is noise. Noises in the streets, noises daytime, nighttime, by airplane, by the traffic, and so on. This was a light drawing, and you see a T, a big T, and this is a T, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 graphic designers were asked to make a poster. Each graphic designer has to use one letter. I had the T. And so I made a light drawing with the T and added then this face. Now what I am to underline my will to be constructive and to be clearly in the information, what I felt me as a technician in communication, and I felt me responsible to translate information for a product or for an institution or for an idea as clear as possible. I developed for myself a grid, and this is now a grid and for typography and for using and setting photography or a drawing. And each grid here means each part means here you can put in a certain quantity of lines. And the first line should start here, the last line in this field should end here. And this is a leading space between two blocks of typography. And if you need a poster, if you would have to use a poster, the smallest poster should exactly fit with this area here. A second big photography should be not bigger than the two areas are showing here, and so on. So you have here a wide variation of using different formats, a wide range of possibilities. So the samples are based on the use of a grid system. This was a newspaper ads for a packaging firm. And products for the same firm with a viewpoint of or idea of a corporate identity, to create a corporate identity program for one firm with a specific colors, specific typography, and the specific arrangement of typography. This was done by a poster and an editor in a group of publishers in Netherlands asked me to create a poster done with a computer, and I programmed the computer and could work in the night time and produced and created this poster. It was used for internal use. It was thought for internal use in the publishing company, not for the street. And the text was given, learning to be learning. The two sentences or the two titles were given. Window display for a firm who produces playing cards. A symbol for an institute for science research and art research. And the formulas, the headline, the different formulas. A firm in Austria who asked me to create a trademark. And the formula and the prospectus. A poster for constructive painters, and you see here an empty field. This symbolizes a painting, an empty sizes or canvas of a possible painting. A poster for a double exhibition. A poster for a Japanese lighting company. A poster for myself. I was asked to design a poster who illustrates the grid system. How I usually design a poster. And so I let appear the grid system as a basic for the typographic arrangement. Now the first box is finished and some others. And I can tell you, this is one part of my life, of my activity, to work for firms, for institutions and so on. This is but the basic of all my work is, I think so, my professional philosophy or my philosophy in profession, which means I try to be informative, objective, informative, and constructive. But I never want to work for a not useful product or ideas for our democratic society. To think you have to be useful, you have to be a needed member for your society. This is the basic of my work, professional work. So I didn't work, I think, since 35 years or 37 years for bad formed products or for bad ideas. for not needed product like tobacco or like alcohol. I worked before, but when I read in the newspaper that tobacco, the smoking is dangerous because of cancer, I immediately informed the tobacco firm that I never will work for them in the further in. So I stopped then with about 10, 12 articles to work for them, because I thought, as I already said, they are not needed for a constructive and democratic society. When next I thought, beside of my work, I have to create ideas useful for our country too and for the society. So we made a new program, a constructive program for our June festival in Zurich. For the music hall, for the opera house, for the art museum, for the school for applied art, for museums too. And a new program, an actual modern program. I offered it the president of our city, and he asked me to discuss the problem with the directors of a different institution, but they were against it because it was not a product of their own intentions. I was then, as a graphic designer, not accepted, because a graphic designer has nothing to tell about music programs or opera programs and so on. But I tried, and I did it because I felt me responsible for our society, and I still feel me responsible. This is a picture of an exhibition, a national exhibition. The outside of the exhibition, you see the round windows makes possible for people to look in what's happened. The inside was dark, you can see it now. The problems, the themes of the exhibition were presented here in the enlightened boxes and on the big screens. This was the laboratory, the youth laboratory, in the same national exhibition, with design symbols for a swimming pool for the youth. And this angle here, it's not quite an exact square. The angle here is the same angle as the roof had of the building. The roof has the typical angled forms. And more important job was to create the design manual, information manual for the airport in Zurich. This is a picture where we designed the hall for the new airport. And another work is now what I started some years ago, the manual for the Swiss railways. This is the cover of the manual. We proportioned the existing symbol. We showed now on single pages the construction of letters, of numbers, of pictograms. These are the information tables for the stations in Switzerland. On the left side, the negative symbol for the Swiss railways in the red fields. On the right side, the negative white letters and words for the stations on the blue ground. And the alphabet were used, and they are used for the whole Switzerland. And the 50 pictograms. And all were proportioned on this grid here. This is the railway station in Basel. This in Olten, another city. And also the wagon have the same symbol and the same lettering, the same kind of lettering. This is the time schedule, and a very, very difficult job was to work with a computer programmed time schedule. We had to work here very, very long time to be organized and to be functional, related to the need of a time schedule. This is the education and information to the education center of the Swiss Railways. Some other works I did, this was an experience with a drawing. I deformed it with the help of a photography, enlarged it, and it was then a wall painting for a cafeteria. And this was a 4-meter high symbol for an exhibition. And I did some artwork for a new building for old people, cafeteria. And this is the dining room, the wall painting for the dining room. And that I published a map of all this painting. And I was asked to make a sculpture for the city of Rapperswil, in which I was born. And this sculpture demonstrates now the 2 modular systems by Corbusier. I organized the height on the basis of the modular proportions. And I don't know if you know the modular proportions by Corbusier. You can give each proportion and different lengths. And I used different lengths in the proportion scale and used 2 proportions. And I thought this is a high school for technicians. And I thought the sculpture must have an educational theme, an educational report, an educational information. And only the director of the school, he found out the system. He was the only, because he was trained and educated in mathematics. And he found out the 2 modular system here. So, as I said, I thought I have to be informative first, informative, communicating with truly information. And I stopped to bring in too much fantasy, which has nothing to do with the product or with the idea itself. So I trained me and worked since long years as a communicator, objective thinking communicator of information and translator of information. And I had then the idea to distribute these ideas worldwide and ask 3 colleagues to cooperate, and which were Richard Lohse, the famous constructivist as a painter, Hans Neuburg, he was a very good graphic designer and an art critic, and Carlo Vivarelli, he was one of the best graphic designers we had, and he changed then to be a painter and sculptor. And we 4, we edited then 19 numbers of his magazine. And it was when the magazine was ended when because of a too high deficit. The publisher said, I thank you very much, it was a pleasure and for us a great honor to have a chance to publish this magazine, but now the deficit is already too high, we have to stop. And but it was really, it was one of best magazine in this line of thinking. And beside of my work, and I have since 22 years a gallery for constructive and geometric arts, painting and more or less sculpture in the city I was born, and this is already in Europe, in all the countries, well known because of a very strict line. And this is another kind of my activity, and another thing I am fascinated is to find out the original works, books by the pioneers of the 20th century. And so I have a wonderful library, probably 13,000 books about architecture, about city planning, about gardening, garden planning, about product design, about typography, about literature, about graphic design, about film, movie, about theater, about oh, I forgot it. So all in all, I'm very proud of this library because they gives me always new impulses, and I think it's very needed for a designer to be all around 360 degrees around it, interested in other fields of activities, of creative activities. So be interested in the modern architecture, modern music, and modern theater, modern product design, and so on. Because the rules in the creation, in the creative process, the rules are more or less similar. If you see a type of clearly organized, it looks to be light, it looks to be poetry-like. See an architecture, it's architecture to be functionally, it seems to be transparent. If you see a facade, it's an expression of an inside organization. And if you see here in your building the big, the large windows, you immediately are informed behind must be a studio who needs light, the daylight. This is interesting. It's if you study the buildings by Mies van der Rohe, or by Corbusier, or by Perret, or by Alvar Aalto, you can go from you can realize that the outside is an expression of the inside organization. And So and beside of my graphic design job, I was for some years a stage designer in Zurich, in Germany, in Denmark, and but I was never satisfied about what I did, because I thought it must be a higher quality with more clarity, with more creativity, and so on. And when I saw clear what I should be able to do, I stopped immediately, like I stopped with doing illustration. And I find when after some years, I find when my vision of a good theater realized when no theater of Japan in Japan. And in some theater by Bertolt Brecht in East Berlin and once in Sweden. But so beside, and what I want to express all in all, and I said it this morning once, try to do the best what we are able to do. Be never satisfied with what we are doing. Mistrust always what you did, what you just did. Mistrust the compliment, mistrust the success. And secondly, be always open-minded, be interested in and try to find connections and relationships in other fields of activity, and find the contact with